The Las Vegas Raiders have a big game coming up against the Baltimore Ravens. Many people don't think the Raiders have a chance in this match, and some have already written off their 2024 NFL season. But I believe the Raiders could surprise everyone and win several games this year, starting with the Ravens. Now, the game will be in Baltimore, and that's no small challenge. It's scheduled for 10 a.m., which means the Raiders will need to prove themselves, especially since they've struggled in away games for the last 5 to 7 years. But this season could be different, and the second game might be where they turn things around. To beat the Ravens, the Raiders need to take advantage of key matchups, which we'll discuss in this video. We'll also look at some advanced stats and talk about the Raiders quarterback later on. But first, let's break down the Ravens offense, starting with their biggest threat, Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is a player the Raiders will have to focus on. If they can't slow him down, winning will be tough. The good news, Jackson isn't the best pure passer. Sure, he's a fantastic playmaker, but he doesn't have the same passing accuracy as a Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. For example, last week against the Chiefs, he missed a few key throws. Now, don't get me wrong, Lamar Jackson is an excellent quarterback, but he shines because of his athleticism. He's one of the fastest players on the field, maybe only behind Tyreek Hill. To beat him, the Raiders need to keep him in the pocket and force him to rely on his arm, which is where he tends to struggle. In playoff games, teams have found success by containing Jackson in the pocket and making him pass. This strategy works because playoff teams usually have top-tier defensive coordinators who know how to handle players like him. If the Raiders can do the same, they'll have a chance to win. Defensively, the Raiders need to be smart. When Jackson is in the pocket, pass rushers can't go all out like they would against quarterbacks like Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr. They need to keep him contained, or he'll break free and make plays with his legs. The defensive line must stay disciplined, and even Patrick Graham, the Raiders' defensive coordinator, has said that letting Jackson escape the pocket is a recipe for disaster. While the Ravens' offensive line may not give up many sacks, that's partly because Jackson makes plays with his legs. However, the Raiders' defense can take advantage of some weak spots. The Ravens' right tackle and right guard are vulnerable, and Max Crosby needs to exploit those matchups. The Ravens also have talented players like Zay Flowers and tight ends Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, but their offensive line isn't as strong as the Chargers, whom the Raiders dominated last week. If the Raiders can play smart defense and contain Jackson, they'll have a solid chance of winning this game. The Las Vegas Raiders have a tough game ahead against the Baltimore Ravens, with many doubting the Raiders' ability to secure a win. However, despite past struggles, especially on the road, there's a chance for the Raiders to pull off a victory. The game will be played in Baltimore, and the Raiders need to improve their road performance, something that's been a challenge over the past few years. The focal point of the Ravens' offense is Lamar Jackson. While Jackson is a phenomenal athlete, his passing game can be inconsistent. The Raiders need to force Jackson to stay in the pocket and challenge him to make accurate downfield throws, something that has historically limited his success, especially in playoff-like situations. The Raiders' defense must balance aggression with caution. Players like Max Crosby will be key in applying pressure, but must remain disciplined to avoid letting Jackson escape the pocket. The Ravens' offensive line has weak points, particularly on the right side, which the Raiders can exploit. The game will hinge on containing Jackson and limiting big plays to the Ravens' skill players, like rookie wide receiver Zay Flowers and tight ends Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. The Raiders struggled to run the ball last week against the Chargers, largely due to poor interior offensive line play. Improvement is needed from key linemen like Cody Whitehair and Andre James for the running game to succeed. The Raiders' offensive strategy hinges on running the football, controlling the clock, and minimizing turnovers. Minshew, who beat the Ravens in an overtime game last season while with the Colts, must protect the football and avoid costly mistakes. The Raiders need to take calculated risks downfield but must avoid turnovers, which killed their chances last week. While the Ravens have a strong defense with stars like linebacker Roquan Smith and safety Kyle Hamilton, the Raiders' offense can find success by being balanced and aggressive when necessary. The Raiders can win this game if they contain Lamar Jackson by keeping him in the pocket and limiting his ability to create plays with his legs. Exploit weaknesses in the Ravens' offensive line and force turnovers. Run the football effectively, control the clock, and minimize mistakes on offense. The game will likely come down to execution in critical moments, and the Raiders must capitalize on every opportunity to come out on top. In this upcoming Raiders vs. Ravens matchup. Advanced stats provide key insights that can shape the outcome of the game. Using a platform like telemetry, which offers advanced analytics, we can get a better understanding of where both teams stand. However, since the data is based on only one game, it's essential to consider the broader context. The Baltimore Ravens struggled to be explosive through the air in Week 1, ranking 22nd in the NFL in passing success. Meanwhile, the Raiders' defense ranked 7th overall, which is promising for them heading into this matchup. Despite this, facing Lamar Jackson in man coverage poses risks, as his ability to scramble can lead to big plays. The key will be for the Raiders to apply disciplined pressure without leaving themselves vulnerable. The Raiders' defense was the third best in man coverage last week, while the Ravens' offense ranked 25th against man coverage. This creates a potential mismatch in the Raiders' favor. However, it's risky to play man coverage against a mobile quarterback like Lamar Jackson, as defenders with their backs turned could allow him to take off for big yardage. On the offensive side, the Raiders ranked 7th in explosive plays through the air. The Ravens' defense, however, ranked last in defending explosive pass plays last week. This presents an opportunity for Gardner Minshew and the Raiders to attack downfield, especially if they can exploit the Ravens' secondary weaknesses. The Ravens' run defense was excellent against the Chiefs, who have one of the top offensive lines in the NFL. The Raiders, with a bottom 10 offensive line, face a significant challenge in establishing their running game. This matchup could dictate whether the Raiders can stick to their preferred conservative game plan or will need to rely more on their passing attack. The Raiders must maintain discipline in pass rush situations and avoid overcommitting, which could allow Jackson to break off big runs. Despite the challenge posed by the Ravens' stout run defense, the Raiders need to establish the run to maintain balance. Success on the ground will allow them to control the clock and limit turnovers. With the Ravens' struggles in defending the pass, the Raiders have a golden opportunity to stretch the field and create big plays. Gardner Minshew must be aggressive yet careful with the football to avoid mistakes. While the Ravens are historically a strong team, there's no reason to believe the Raiders can't pull off a win in Baltimore. If the Raiders can protect the football, take advantage of mismatches in the secondary, and control the game with disciplined defense, they could leave with a win. Even if the Raiders start 0-2, the season is far from over, with winnable games against teams like the Panthers and Broncos on the horizon. This game will be a test of the Raiders' ability to adapt, improve, and take advantage of key opportunities.